Picture this, you're sitting years from now, maybe with your grandkids, maybe alone on your porch, and someone asks you, so what's your story? You open your mouth and there's nothing, not because you didn't live, but because you never dared. You played it safe. You avoided the risks. You took the easy turns, the quiet routes, the roads where nothing could hurt you. And because of that, nothing truly moved you either. The truth is, the people with the most powerful stories aren't the ones who had it all figured out. They're the ones who walked into rooms they weren't sure they belonged in. They're the ones who took the call, booked the ticket, made the leap without knowing if the ground would catch them. And yes, they stumbled, they fell, they looked foolish sometimes. But they also soared. Think about it. Every movie you've ever loved, every hero you've admired, every life that inspires you has a common thread. At some point, they risked something. Money, reputation, comfort, safety, even their own peace of mind. And without that risk, the story wouldn't exist. It'd be flat, forgettable. Most people avoid risk because they fear the unknown. But what they don't realize is the unknown is the birthplace of everything extraordinary. The business you dream of, unknown. The relationship that could change your life, unknown. The version of you you've never met yet. The stronger, bolder, braver one. You can't meet them unless you walk through that door of uncertainty. And here's the thing, no one's coming to shove you through it. Life won't tap you on the shoulder and say, it's safe now, you can go. No, you have to decide. You have to look at that leap and say, if I fall, but if I fly, I'll have a story worth telling. Because at the end of the day, that's all life really leaves you with, a story. And the question is, will yours be the kind someone leans in to hear, or the kind they forget before you finish? No risk, no story. It's that simple. You know why most people never taste the life they secretly dream about? It's not because they're not smart enough, talented enough, or lucky enough. It's because they stay where it's comfortable. The comfort zone is a quiet trap. It's warm, it's predictable, it's safe, but it's also where dreams go to suffocate slowly. It whispers to you, you're fine here, why change, why risk? And you listen because it feels easier. No confrontation, no potential embarrassment, no painful mistakes. But what you don't see is that every day you stay there, a piece of your potential slips away unnoticed. Comfort is seductive because it promises you stability. But stability is often just another word for stagnation. A flower can't bloom if it refuses to push through the dirt. A bird can't fly if it never leaves the nest. Yet so many people spend their lives guarding the little nest they've built, same job, same friends, same routines, thinking that this is security. What it really is self-imposed limitation. You've built a fence around your life, and you call it safety. But in reality, it's a prison you volunteered for. The danger with comfort is that it doesn't feel dangerous. Pain gets your attention. Comfort doesn't. It lulls you into thinking that time isn't passing, that opportunities will always be there, that tomorrow you'll get serious. But days turn into months, months into years, and one day you realize you're still in the same spot you were 5 years ago. Same income, same habits, same frustrations. You think you're preserving your life, but what you're really doing is letting it waste away in slow motion. Let's be honest, comfort zones are rarely about actual safety. They're about avoiding the discomfort of growth. Growth is messy. It's unpredictable. It forces you to face your weaknesses, your doubts, your insecurities. And most people would rather stay in a smaller life than confront the fact that they might fail at building a bigger one. But here's the paradox. The longer you stay comfortable, the harder it becomes to leave. The walls get higher, the excuses get stronger, and your own mind starts convincing you that this is enough. You've probably heard someone say, I'm just not ready yet. Let me tell you something, you will never feel fully ready to do something that matters. Readiness is a myth. It's the excuse comfort zones feed you to keep you still. You become ready by doing, not by waiting. That's why the most powerful changes in life happen when you're uncomfortable, when you're forced to adapt, when the ground under your feet doesn't feel steady anymore. Discomfort is not a threat, it's an invitation. It's life saying, there's more for you, but you're going to have to step up to get it. Think of the last time you truly grew as a person. I guarantee it wasn't during a stretch of time where everything was easy and predictable. Maybe it was after a loss. Maybe it was when you took a job you weren't sure you could handle. Maybe it was when you moved to a place where you didn't know anyone. In those moments, you were forced to dig deeper, to learn faster, to become someone you weren't before. That's the thing about discomfort. It doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes you. And when you change, your life changes. Opportunities that were invisible before start showing up. People you never would have met start crossing your path. Possibilities you never considered become real options. But none of that happens inside your comfort zone. Because inside your comfort zone, everything is the same. Same people, same thoughts, same outcomes. Here's the brutal truth. Comfort zones don't just limit your future, they also erase your story. Nobody wants to hear about the time you watched another TV series or played it safe at work for the 100th day in a row. But tell them about the time you risked your job to start your own business, or the time you left everything familiar to chase something you believed in, and they'll lean in. Why? Because that's a story worth telling. Stories are born in the tension between fear and courage, between uncertainty and boldness. Comfort zones don't have tension, they have repetition. This is why people who live extraordinary lives are often misunderstood. They're the ones who leave secure jobs to follow a calling. They're the ones who move to a new city without knowing a soul. They're the ones who say yes before they figure out exactly how they'll do it. To the comfortable, that looks reckless. But to those who've tasted growth, it's necessary. I'm not telling you to throw yourself into chaos without a plan. I'm telling you to recognize that your comfort zone is not your friend. It's not neutral, it's actively holding you back. And the longer you stay there, the harder it will be to remember what you're capable of. So if you want a life that you can look back on with pride, you need to start making moves that scare you a little. Take the class you've been putting off, have the conversation you've been avoiding, apply for the job you think is just out of reach. Do the thing your safe self says, maybe later too, because here's the truth. Your comfort zone will always be there if you want to come back, but the opportunities you pass up, they won't wait. They'll go to the person who was willing to step out and take the risk. And years from now, when you're telling your story, you'll either talk about the chances you took or the ones you let slip away. No one gets remembered for staying comfortable. They get remembered for daring. And daring starts with walking out of that quiet, warm, suffocating space you've been calling enough, and stepping into the unknown where your real story begins. Fear has a bad reputation. People talk about it like it's a disease, something you need to cure, avoid, or escape from. But here's the truth most people never hear. Fear is not always the enemy. In fact, if you feel no fear at all, you're probably living too small. Fear shows up when you're standing at the edge of something important, something that has the power to change your life. That pounding in your chest, that's not weakness. That's your body saying, pay attention, this matters. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not just existing, not just going through the motions, but feeling that electric charge in your veins. Chances are, it was in a moment that scared you. Maybe you were about to step on stage. Maybe you were about to hit send on something you worked on for months. Maybe you were about to tell someone how you really felt. That moment when your palms sweat, your heart races, and your brain screams, what if I mess this up? That's the gateway to growth. The problem is, most people misread fear's message. They feel it and think, this must mean I'm not ready, or this is dangerous. But fear doesn't always mean you're in danger. It often means you're about to expand into a version of yourself you haven't met yet, and expansion is uncomfortable. Your mind is designed to keep you safe, to keep you inside what's familiar. So when you're about to break into new territory, it sounds the alarm not to hurt you, but to make you stop and think. That's your choice point. That's when you decide, do I step forward despite the fear, or do I retreat and stay the same? People who achieve great things feel fear, just like you do. The difference is, they've learned to use it as fuel instead of a stop sign. They know that fear is often the compass, pointing them toward exactly what they should be doing. If something scares you because it's meaningful, that's your clue you're on the right track. And yet, so many turn back at the first sign of fear. They convince themselves they'll try again when they're ready, but readiness never comes. The truth is, you don't get rid of fear first. You move through it And on the other side, you find out you were capable all along. Think about a time in your life when you avoided something because you were scared. Maybe it was a job interview you canceled at the last minute. Maybe it was a trip you didn't take because it felt too risky. Maybe it was speaking up for yourself when it mattered most. Now, think about how you felt afterwards. Relief? Maybe for a moment. But under that relief, there's usually something else. Regret. Regret is fear's shadow. When you give in to fear, you trade short-term comfort for long-term what-ifs. And those what-ifs can follow you for years. Now, flip it. Think of a time when you did the thing, even though you were scared. Remember the speech you gave, even though your voice was shaking. Remember the leap you took into something you didn't fully understand. Remember how, after it was over, you felt bigger somehow, like you'd grown into more of yourself. That's the magic of acting in the presence of fear. It transforms you. You learn that you can survive discomfort, that you can function under pressure, that you can keep going even when your mind is screaming for you to stop. Here's the truth: fear never fully disappears. People wait their whole lives for that day when they'll feel completely confident, when there's no doubt, no nerves, no uncertainty. That day doesn't come. Confidence isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move anyway. In fact, if you're not feeling fear regularly, it's a sign you're not challenging yourself enough. Fear is proof that you're pushing at the edges of what you know, what you've done, who you've been. Without it, you're on autopilot, and autopilot never takes you anywhere new. Right? It's also important to understand that not all fear is created equal. There's the fear that warns you when something is truly dangerous, like standing too close to a cliff or walking into a threatening situation. That fear keeps you alive. But there's another kind of fear, the kind that rises when you're about to do something meaningful. That's the fear that shows up when you're stepping into an interview for your dream job, when you're about to share your art, when you're starting a business, when you're telling someone you love them. That fear isn't there to save your life. It's there because you're about to stretch your life. You have to learn to tell the difference. And once you know which kind of fear you're dealing with, you can decide to walk right into it. Because here's the secret: the bigger the fear, the bigger the potential reward. The moments that scare you the most are often the moments that will define your life. If you study the people who've left their mark on the world, you'll find that every one of them faced fear. They faced ridicule, rejection, failure, and sometimes even danger. But they understood something most don't. Fear is temporary, but the rewards of courage can last a lifetime. They knew that if they let fear dictate their choices, their stories would be short and forgettable. So they made a habit of walking toward it. That's a habit you can build too. You start small, say yes to the presentation you want to decline, introduce yourself to the stranger who intimidates you, try the thing you've been researching for months but avoiding. Each time you act, despite fear, you train your brain to see it differently. It stops being a red light and becomes a green light, a signal that says, go, this matters. And when you start living that way, something incredible happens. The fears that used to paralyze you start to shrink. The challenges that once seemed impossible become manageable. You stop looking for ways to avoid discomfort and start looking for ways to grow. And your life starts filling with moments worth remembering, moments that wouldn't exist if you'd let fear win. So the next time fear shows up, don't run from it. Don't wait for it to go away. Recognize it for what it is, a sign that you're on the edge of something worth doing. Take a deep breath. Step forward anyway, because fear isn't the end of the road, it's the doorway to your best chapters. And if you're brave enough to walk through, you'll have a story worth telling. Most people think taking risks means throwing yourself into chaos with no safety net, no plan, no thought for the consequences. That's not bravery, that's recklessness. And recklessness is not the same as courage. Courage is about stepping into the unknown with your eyes open, knowing it could go wrong, but making sure you've done everything in your power to give yourself the best chance of success. That's the difference between calculated risk and reckless risk. A calculated risk is intentional. It's you saying, I'm going to step outside my comfort zone, but I'm going to prepare myself for what I might face. It doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you've thought it through, weighed the possible outcomes, and decided the potential reward is worth the potential setback. A reckless risk is a blind leap into the dark without even checking if there's ground beneath you. One can change your life for the better, the other can derail it entirely. The reason this distinction matters is because when people hear take risks, they sometimes think it's a license to act impulsively. They quit their job without a plan. They invest all their money in something they haven't researched. They say yes to commitments they can't follow through on. That's not strength. That's gambling. And gambling with your future isn't bold. It's careless. Calculated risk is strategic. It's the business owner who launches a new product only after testing it on a small scale. It's the athlete who changes their training routine to improve performance, but first studies the science behind it. It's the person who moves to a new city, but spends months networking and lining up opportunities before they pack their bags. In all these cases, there's still uncertainty, still a chance of failure, but the person is walking in prepared, not blind. Some people avoid risk altogether because they're terrified of failing. Others take reckless risks because they want quick results, or because they confuse movement with progress. But here's the thing, growth is a balance between the two extremes. Avoiding risk keeps you stuck. Taking reckless risks burns bridges and wastes opportunities. With calculated risk, that's the sweet spot where transformation happens. It's like climbing a mountain. Reckless is charging up the side without checking the weather, without the right gear, without even a map. Calculated risk is checking the forecast, packing the tools you need, and still understanding you might face storms along the way. Either way, there's no guarantee you reach the top, but the odds are much better if you've thought ahead. Preparation is the backbone of calculated risk. And preparation doesn't mean eliminating all uncertainty. It means strengthening yourself so you can handle whatever comes. You can't predict every curveball, but you can train yourself to be resourceful, adaptable, and resilient. That's the part most people skip. They think risk is about the one big leap, but it's also about the 100 quiet steps you take before it. The most successful risk takers in any field aren't reckless daredevils. They're students of their craft. They do the research. They learn from people who've done it before. They run the numbers. They play out the scenarios in their head. They prepare for the best case and worst case outcomes. And when they finally make the leap, it's still scary, but they're not relying on blind luck. They're relying on the groundwork they've laid. Taking calculated risks also means accepting that failure is part of the process. You can prepare perfectly and still fall short. But when you've taken a calculated risk, even failure becomes valuable. Why? Because you've gathered information, you've tested yourself, and you've built skills that you can use in the next attempt. When you're reckless, failure often teaches nothing because it's too messy, too uncontrolled, too haphazard to learn from. The truth is, the people who succeed most aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail in ways that give them the tools to succeed later. They take risks that stretch them just enough to grow, without breaking them completely. That's the mindset you need if you want a story worth telling. You're not just chasing the win, you're building the kind of experience and wisdom that will carry you through many more risks in the future. Another key part of calculated risk is timing. Some opportunities are about striking while the iron's hot. Others are about waiting for the right conditions. Reckless people ignore timing completely. They jump because they're impatient or because they've been pushed by someone else's urgency. Calculated risk takers understand that waiting is not the same as procrastinating. Sometimes you need to hold your position, gather resources, or strengthen your skills before making the move. The key is knowing the difference between waiting for the right moment and hiding in fear. Calculated risks also require self-awareness. You have to know your limits and your strengths. You have to be honest about what you can handle now versus what you need to work toward. This isn't about playing small, it's about playing smart. If you're not ready for the biggest leap, take a smaller one that will prepare you for it. Build your capacity so that when the bigger risk comes, you're not just hoping to survive, you're aiming to win. One of the most dangerous myths is that fortune favors the bold, means you should leap without looking. The truth is, fortune favors the prepared bold, the bold who have studied the terrain, the bold who have strengthened themselves for the climb, the bold who understand that while no risk can be completely safe, there's a way to step into uncertainty with wisdom and intention. And here's the real beauty of calculated risk. It compounds. Each time you take one, your ability to handle uncertainty grows. You become more confident, not because fear disappears, but because you've proven to yourself that you can face it and figure it out. That confidence makes you braver for the next risk. And the one after that, over time, your comfort zone expands, your resilience deepens, and the story you're writing for your life gets richer and more compelling. So when you face your next decision, ask yourself, am I avoiding this because I'm afraid of failing, or am I rushing into it without a plan? Either answer is a warning sign. The sweet spot is in the middle, bold enough to step forward, wise enough to prepare. That's where the real growth happens. That's where the stories worth telling are born. Because at the end of the day, taking no risk at all leaves you with nothing. Taking reckless risks leaves you with chaos. But calculated risks, they leave you with progress, lessons, and a life you can look back on and say, I didn't just play it smart, I played it brave. Every story worth telling has a turning point. That moment when the main character has to make a choice, play it safe or step into the unknown. In real life, it's no different. Every great story you admire, every life that inspires you has that single defining moment where courage became the deciding factor. Without that moment, the rest of the story would collapse. Without that moment, the hero remains just another face in the crowd. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's not waking up one day magically fearless, ready to face anything without hesitation. No, courage is feeling the fear, hearing all the doubts in your head, and still saying, I'm doing it. That's the difference between people who make history and people who watch it happen. They both feel fear, but only one group moves forward anyway. Think about any story you've ever been drawn to. There's always that scene where the character has to take the leap. It's when the athlete plays through the pain to win the game. It's when the entrepreneur bets everything on a product no one believes in yet. It's when someone stands up for what's right, even though it could cost them their job, their reputation, or their safety. These are the moments where people reveal who they are. Everything before it builds up to that point, and everything after it flows from that decision. What makes these moments so powerful is that they're irreversible. Once you choose courage, you can't unchoose it. Even if the outcome isn't what you hoped for, you can never go back to the version of yourself who avoided risk. You've seen what you're capable of. You've proven to yourself that you can stand in the storm and not crumble. That knowledge changes you. The problem is, most people think these moments of courage will arrive with perfect clarity, like the world will stop and a voice will say, now is the time. But in reality, they show up disguised as ordinary decisions. It might be as simple as speaking up in a meeting, making that phone call, walking through that door. It's often small actions that lead to big consequences. And because they seem small at the time, most people miss them. They hesitate, they wait for more signs, they let the moment pass. You never know which act of courage will alter your life. That's why you can't afford to keep backing down when the moment arrives. You have to be ready to recognize it and step into it. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands sweat, even if you feel like you're walking blindfolded into the unknown. The truth is, the unknown is where the best parts of your story live. Courage also has a ripple effect. When you choose courage, you give permission to others to do the same. You've probably felt it yourself. Seeing someone take a bold step makes you think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. This is why people who live courageously leave a legacy. They don't just change their own story, they inspire countless others to rewrite theirs. And courage is not just for grand gestures. It's for the everyday choices that slowly shape who you are becoming. It's having the difficult conversation you've been avoiding. It's setting a boundary with someone who keeps overstepping. It's admitting you were wrong and making it right. These small moments of courage may never make headlines, but they change the trajectory of your life in quiet, profound ways. There's also something else about courage. People don't always realize it's contagious to your future self. Every time you act courageously, you make it easier to do it again. You create a pattern in your mind that says, I can face discomfort and survive it. So the next time a bigger challenge comes, you're not starting from zero. You're building on a foundation of previous wins. But here's the other side of the coin. If you keep choosing comfort over courage, you create a different pattern. You start teaching yourself to back down when things get hard. You condition your brain to avoid risk. And slowly, without even noticing, you stop expecting much from yourself. That's how people end up with stories they're not proud to tell. Not because they lacked opportunities, but because they lacked the courage to seize them. We all want to believe we'd rise to the occasion in a defining moment. But rising to the occasion doesn't start in the moment itself. It starts in the choices you make every day. If you practice speaking up when it's uncomfortable, trying new things when they're unfamiliar, saying yes when it's scary, then when the big moment comes, you're ready. Your courage muscle is already strong. Here's something to remember. No one regrets an act of courage, even if it doesn't work out the way they hoped. But almost everyone regrets the moments they let fear win. Years later, they replay them in their mind, wondering what would have happened if they'd just taken the chance. That's the thing about courage. It might not guarantee the outcome you want, but it guarantees you won't be haunted by what if. So when you feel that pull between staying safe and stepping forward, pay attention. That's your turning point. That's the chapter you'll remember when the rest fades. You might be standing at the edge of something that could define your life, and the only thing between you and that story is a single choice. Will you step forward or will you step back? Because in the end, the story you tell about your life will hinge on those moments of courage. They're the ones people will lean in to hear. They're the ones that will make you proud when you're old. They're the ones that will remind you that, for at least a few moments in your life, you refuse to let fear make your decisions for you. And that's what separates a life that's remembered from one that's forgotten. Regret is a slow, quiet poison. It doesn't hit you all at once like failure does. Failure is loud, immediate, and raw. You feel it right away. But regret creeps in over time. It whispers in your ear when you're alone. It plays scenes in your mind of the chances you didn't take, the words you didn't say, the doors you didn't walk through. And unlike failure, regret doesn't teach you much, because you never gave yourself the chance to try in the first place. The sting of failure fades. You can look back on something you tried and didn't succeed at and say, at least I went for it. At least I know. You learn from it. You adapt. You try again. But regret? Regret leaves you wondering forever. You can't fix something you never started. You can't improve on something you never attempted. That what if hangs over you like a shadow you can't shake. The truth is, when people reach the later years of their lives, they don't usually talk about the risks they took and failed at. They talk about the opportunities they missed because they were too scared, too unsure, too worried about what might go wrong. They don't say, I wish I hadn't tried that business that failed. They say, I wish I'd been brave enough to start it in the first place. They don't say, I wish I hadn't moved to that city that didn't work out. They say, I wish I'd explored more while I had the chance. The fear of regret should be bigger than the fear of failure. But for most people, it's the opposite. They fear the short-term discomfort of failing more than they fear the long-term ache of wondering what could have been. They trade decades of possibility for moments of temporary safety. It's a bad deal, but it's one we're conditioned to take. We're taught to avoid embarrassment, avoid rejection, avoid loss. But no one tells you that avoiding all of those things also means avoiding the best parts of life. When you take a risk and fail, you still gain something. Experience, lessons, resilience, and often a new path you couldn't have seen otherwise. When you avoid the risk entirely, you gain nothing except the false comfort of staying the same. And one day, that comfort won't feel so comfortable anymore. It will feel like a cage. You'll look at the walls you built around yourself and realize you locked yourself in. The weight of regret grows heavier over time because the opportunities you missed rarely come back in the same way. That person you didn't speak to might have been the connection that changed your career. That idea you didn't act on might have been the one that set you free financially. That chance you passed up to travel, to learn, to explore. It's not guaranteed you'll get it again. Life doesn't always give second chances, and even when it does, you're not always the same person you were when the first one came around. I've seen people cling to safety for years, convincing themselves they'll take the leap when the timing is right. And then years later, they look back and realize they were waiting for perfect conditions that never came. Regret often isn't about one big missed opportunity. It's about a lifetime of small ones that added up. It's about all the moments you said not now until there was no later left. The cruel thing about regret is that it's avoidable, but only if you're willing to take the risks you fear. It's the price you pay for choosing comfort over courage. But the moment you start choosing courage, you start protecting yourself from it. Every time you take a risk, even if you fall flat, you're building a story you'll be proud to tell. You're giving yourself something to look back on with pride instead of longing. And here's something to remember. The people you admire most aren't the ones who got everything right. They're the ones who refused to let fear write their story. They're the ones who collected experiences, who wore their failures like badges of honor, because each one meant they tried. They're the ones who lived in a way that left no space for what if. You have to decide what matters more to you, the possibility of short-term embarrassment or the certainty of long-term regret. Because one of those you can recover from, and one of them you can't. You can bounce back from failure. You can learn from mistakes, but you can't go back in time and grab the opportunities you let slip away. So ask yourself, if I don't do this, will I regret it later? That question cuts through all the excuses. It forces you to look beyond the fear you feel right now and imagine the version of you looking back years from today. That version of you won't care about the opinions that scared you. They won't care about the temporary comfort you clung to. They'll only care about whether you gave yourself the chance to live fully. The truth is, we're all writing a story with our lives. And in the end, the only thing worse than a story with a few bad chapters is a story with no chapters at all. Just blank pages where something great could have been. Regret writes those blank pages. Risk fills them with something worth remembering. So take the trip, start the business, have the conversation, step into the unknown, because years from now, you'll either be telling the story of how you went for it, or you'll be wishing you had. And the difference between those two futures comes down to the choice you make today. Failure hurts, but regret stays. Don't let it. At the end of the day, life will not remember the moments you played it safe. It will remember the moments you stepped forward despite fear. You are not here to tiptoe through life, hoping to make it safely to death. You are here to build, to try, to risk, to fall, to rise, and to live so fully that when your time comes, there is nothing left unsaid, undone, or unlived. Fear is temporary, but regret is permanent. Every choice you make is either adding to your story or erasing possibilities from it. So take the leap, even when your legs shake. Speak up, even when your voice trembles. Move, even when your path isn't clear. Because one day you'll look back, and the only thing you'll ever truly wish is that you had been braver. Your life is happening now. Not next year. Not when you feel ready. Not when conditions are perfect. Now. So choose courage over comfort. Choose risk over regret. Choose to live a story worth telling.